Welcome to the Black Appalachian Coalition's podcast entitled Blac Re-Membering, where we will bring to you the heavy and the hope across the Ohio River Valley. We want to remember who we are, where we've come from. We want to speak to the oral history of what we've done, what we've achieved. We want to speak to the ills that we have experienced while also finding solutions to those problems, those issues. We want to deal with the narrative that has kept us deeply rooted in despair. Now we want to punch through that narrative and stand up and say, we are remembering our Black past, and we are rooted, and we are here to stay. Welcome to Blac Re-Membering. We hope that you find your place, your space, and your voice in this podcast.
Hello, this is Marie Cochran, and today I'm having a conversation with my dear friend, Kelle Jolly. I am in North Georgia, and she is in East Tennessee, so we're having that span that is across the mountains without having to do the drive. How are you today, Kelle?
I'm doing well.
I'm going to put a little marker here by saying that it's a countdown to Juneteenth. And so in the spirit of that, the fact that it's a national holiday, I was looking at some photographs where I celebrated my very first Juneteenth in Bristol, Tennessee. And there are pictures of us in a community where there's a celebration. Then across town, there was an official, so-called official city celebration. So that's the first thing about how there are stories about our experience that don't get documented. And then there's the so-called official story that gets recorded. So, we'll have an extended conversation about that, but I think it's important to note it because it's been almost a theme in our friendship, but also a theme for Black folks in Appalachia. So would you like to talk about that or respond to that before we get going?
In East Tennessee, each little town feels like a different village. And that's what I like about it, is that you can ride 30 minutes and you're in a totally different village, different scene, different people. They can kind of meld into each other. That day was an adventure for me because I had left Knoxville and headed first to Morristown. This is what Juneteenth is like in East Tennessee. You can be hanging out at the Black in Appalachia table and tent. I work on the documentary films for Black in Appalachia. I do the voiceovers and sometimes the music soundtracks for the films. And that's my contribution to the organization. But next to that tent was a local crafts person who does the printing on mugs and t-shirts and hats and things like that. And I, of course, like to support local makers. And I saw a cup that I really wanted. And I looked at it and I came back and I was like, I'm going to get that cup. But also that maker also had material in his tent on Juneteenth supporting Trump. So wow. That's what it's like in East Tennessee. It's like, that was my experience in Morristown. And then after that, I left and drove to Kingsport and met you. And we went to those two different Juneteenth celebrations. One that was like in the town center and the other that was in the part of town where a lot of Black people live, near the Elks Lodge. That's
right.
They're trying to save. And and two totally different celebrations in one city, which I didn't know that Kingsport even had the kind of demographics to support that, but they had it, and we got to participate in both of those events. And then after that, I drove to Greenville, Tennessee, and went to a Juneteenth celebration. Was well supported, and it was in a beautiful setting in a park in downtown Greenville, Tennessee. And I really felt good that day that I was able to drive around to all these cities. I guess they're small cities, and see the organization of community coming together in those cities. So it felt good to me on Juneteenth to be able to do that.
You know, people love to use the term Renaissance, but you know, that has a particular feel to it. Doesn't have to be connected to Eurocentric thoughts, but Renaissance to me is birth, rebirth, multifaceted. That's how I see you, because you're a performer, a singer, a storyteller, a maker, and it's just a natural part of who you are. But you have, you know, this skill set that has come from various places. One thing I wanted to say before I get back to us talking directly is the fact that, you know, in my mind, even as I think about being a child, you know, that you would go and visit people from place to place. And so to travel around and stop into these different towns didn't seem strange to me either, because people have families, organizations, churches that have created these traditions. And if you're going to visit people, that's where you can see people. It's almost like a family reunion, or if you talk about going to events, it's almost like sampling from a buffet. But like you said, there was a vibe in each spot. It was interesting to me. I don't want to characterize the city event with this one thing, but it was really interesting to see a racially mixed group. And at the time that I was really attentive to it was predominantly white citizens who were acknowledging that this was a brand new national holiday that year. And there was a group there, and they were face painting, but they were painting watermelons on the kids' faces, slices of watermelon. And that was odd. And then just as a jump ahead, I remember going to the community that's historically Black community, but they were having Juneteenth pageants where, you know, kids had raised money and they were on stage. So it, not to say that one was all one thing or the other, it just, like you said, it shows that interesting mix of how people are trying to figure out how to celebrate the end of slavery in this country. I just realized I need to do a praise song moment and invoke the memory of Sammy Nicely, because way back before the invention, the coining of the phrase Appalachia, he was part of a group that he spearheaded called From Africa to Appalachia in Morristown at the Rose Cultural Center. So both of us have a connection to him, and I just realized I needed to invoke his name. Who he's now a part of. He's an ancestor, and his work and his legacy is just now beginning to be recognized. But you know, this is stuff that people may not expect from East Tennessee, because there's a really very unique history with an HBCU in Knoxville and all these different institutions talking about From Africa to Appalachia and all of this. But what brought you to East Tennessee, and what keeps you in East Tennessee?
When I finished college, I moved to Chattanooga first, and I was married.
And you're not from Tennessee at all.
No, I'm not from Tennessee, and I don't have any family members in Tennessee. I tell people that I am an Appalachian Georgia line of peach. You know, I'm one of those Georgia line of people where I was born in South Carolina and grew up in Georgia. So I grew up in Decatur, Georgia, outside of Atlanta, but I was born in Hampton, South Carolina, because my parents were living in Columbia, South Carolina at the time, and they're both South Carolinians. So I'm an Appalachian Georgia line of peach. I've been in East Tennessee since 2002. And then I was in Chattanooga for a couple of years till 2006. And then I moved to Knoxville, and I don't like to call him my second husband. I call him my last husband. He and I um, got married.
Mr. Will Boyd.
Will Boyd. And I was in Knoxville from 2006 to like 2021. And then I currently live in Johnson City, Tennessee, where I'm looking for housing, which is
That's a whole different
whole
conversation.
But looking for housing. So I've been in East Tennessee since 2002. So it's been over 20 years of living in the largest cities and then living here in the Tri-Cities of East Tennessee.
So that's the first part of the question. What keeps you interested in Appalachia, having had this experience of decades in the region?
So my dad was from the upstate of South Carolina, Gaffney, South Carolina, and had grown up living in Rutherford, North Carolina, Cowpen, South Carolina, and my mom is from the coast of South Carolina. So I feel that southern pull to Gullah Geechee and the coast, and then kind of like mountain life in the upstate. South Carolina is unique like that. It gives you those two different perspectives. And even though I grew up in Atlanta, I still felt that, because you go to Atlanta, you're going to find people who are from Atlanta, but then you're going to find a lot of people from South Carolina. So even in my neighborhood where I grew up, a lot of those people were from South Carolina. Everybody had South Carolina roots. And so I always felt that we always go to the country to go see our grandparents, go to the country to see our aunts and uncles. And so that feeling, that connection never left me. I always feel that connection. Mm-hmm. And moving to East Tennessee is just like over the mountain from South Carolina. A lot of the people that I meet here in East Tennessee have the same last names. I know where they came from. Their family is just 2 generations over the mountain. So I feel that when I'm here, like, oh, these are just the cousins that moved over the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of them. That's how I look, my perspective in looking at it. I was raised with a father who encouraged me to be adventurous, or both of my parents encouraged me to be adventurous, but my dad especially outside, and knowing about plants and what to do if I got lost outside. And I'm sure some of it was from growing up and some of it's probably from his military experience, but I felt connected to outside, like knowing, I want to know what the plants are. I want to know about the animals. I want to know how to look at the sky and know where I am. Those kind of like natural connections reminded me that I am nature. Like my brother Jim Embry always says, we are nature. We are nature. Exactly. Knowing that we are nature, that connects me. So what really connects me when I feel like I want to get out of here is that I love the mountains.
Right.
I love the view of the mountains.
Yes.
I love to see all the green trees growing in the spring, and then all the reds and yellows and oranges in the fall. I love seeing that, the season. It kind of gives you like it lets you know like what's healthy, what's growing, what's new. It's like the news. You look at the trees, you tell like what's new. Oh, it's a different time of the year. The rhododendron are blooming. Mm-hmm. It's a different time of the year. The dogwood are blooming. It's a different time of year. The leaves are falling. I don't know, something about being close to that and being able to see green. It does recharge me. I love gardening and farming and growing, and so I need to have that. I need to have connection. I need to have access to green.
But
Yeah.
let me bring you to what you've just already expressed as, aside from your incredible music, is that you are a wonderful storyteller. Long resume, but you worked with Carpetbagger Theater. You just received a degree in storytelling from East Tennessee State University. How does that figure into your being in the mountains?
I grew up singing music, singing all kinds of music, especially jazz, but folk music. I was influenced by the Georgia C. Allen singers when I was a kindergartner. I grew up listening to all kinds of music. And then in school, of course, I studied like classical music and opera, art songs. When I moved to Chattanooga, I started singing with lots of different bands because I just wanted to sing. I mean, if you grow up, you want to be a singer. The only thing you know to do, especially if you didn't grow up with parents that are professional musicians, then you need to be around other musicians. I just grew up like that. I played trumpet, French horn, I marched in the band.
And you attended an HBCU as an undergrad.
Yes, I graduated from South Carolina State University in Orangeburg, South Carolina. And so did my husband. So I grew up in bands from middle school to high school to college. And then when I moved to Chattanooga, I continued to look for bands. And I performed with the Mailman Show Band, one of the oldest R&B bands, cover bands in this area. But I also did performances and storytelling. And one of the most important things I did was Black history shows for TVA. And one of the employees was, I think his name is Ron Love. And he would always say, "You need to know Carpetbag. You need to know Carpetbag." And I was like, "Who is Carpetbag?" He was like, "Oh, it's a theater group in Chattanooga, in Knoxville, and you need to know Carpetbag." So later, after I got divorced from my first husband and I moved to Knoxville, and I was Will and I were living in Knoxville, I discovered Carpetbag Theater and I met Linda Paris Bailey. I went to a workshop on digital storytelling. I convinced her to let me join the class. I became a member of Carpetbag. I joined the cast of a show called Between a Ballad and a Blues, which was a play that Linda wrote about Howard Armstrong, Carl Martin, and Ted Bogan, who were the Tennessee Chocolate Drop. I learned about their lives and their lives and their legacies. I learned that I also perform the same repertoire music that they perform mostly. Mm-hmm. And so I felt very connected to that legacy. I thought, wow, I'm part of this legacy. I play this music. I live the same kind of life. Like Howard Armstrong, I'm a visual artist and a musical artist. And so I felt like I was just part of that legacy. And so that made me feel connected to this place and also made me feel responsible for advocating for people like that. People
right, being almost like a torchbearer. Right.
Yeah, right. I felt like I needed to carry on with that legacy, and it made me feel connected as a Black in Appalachia, as an Appalachian. And Robert Minter is a Black man that lives in Knoxville who is a Knoxville son. He grew up there and he worked in the city, but he also did a lot of community work, advocating for Black businesses while working for the county. And he and I had a TV show in Knoxville, and I hosted it for about 8 or 9 years. And we got to interview local people. So I got to meet all the politicians and the preachers and the nonprofit leaders and all community workers, authors, and artists throughout my time hosting What's Going On with Robert Minter. And so I got to learn a lot about the city really fast in an intimate way by being the host of a community television show. And that really made me feel connected because not only did I learn about what people were doing and how they were contributing to life of the city, I got to learn what people needed and how I could serve people
Right.
too. So I felt very connected because I knew the parts of people's lives where they were doing service and where they were doing work and what they needed and how to help. I was learning how to help and how I could be a part of things. So it made me feel very connected and close. I have no I don't feel any doubt in calling myself Appalachian, because I have lived this life. And Robert Mentor always say, you drink the fluoride water. I don't question my loyalty or connection to this place because I
Mm-hmm.
felt like I have put a lot of energy and time and dedication, work and support into this place. And also I have felt a lot of love from other people too who have come, maybe were connected, felt drawn to me because of my art, my music, and
Right.
work, and then they've become my friends. So
Wow. It's really wonderful to have this conversation because I've learned some new things about you that I did not know. And, that's part of what, we've talked about many times, how there's so many different layers to people, especially when they're air quotes community people. The things that don't fit on your resume or things that are, difficult to quantify because they're organic. They're, like you said, friendships and relationships. There's this network of support that sometimes is difficult to even explain until you're asked questions about yourself. And then you go, oh, yeah, this and that are connected to that. And I guess this is a good point to say that, we met through social media. It was Ida Cox. Something I may have posted or something that I saw you post, but that was the connection. And I often laugh about the fact that it's the appropriate way for us to be connected, because she is a blues maker, singer, band leader, composer, um, wrote the song Wild Women Don't Get the Blues, was born in my hometown in Toccoa, Georgia, but she's laid to rest in Knoxville, Tennessee, East Tennessee. So how do you tell that story of how we met? Let me just let you talk for a minute.
I think we just started responding to each other's posts online, and
Post,
then
right.
I told you about the Women in Jazz Jam Festival.
At Knoxville Art Museum, right?
Yeah, Knoxville Museum of Art. And then you came to the concert and we met in person.
But yeah, that's the very beginning. But like I said before, and we were talking about Juneteenth, that's what I'm used to, is how you can just kind of meet people. And the mountains, rural life is like that, but also more deeply is the arts.
When you're in a place like this, you live in a place like this with little villages and hollers and all in the holler and stuff. You have to find the safe place, like
That's
quick,
the truth.
quickly, and the
Quick.
safe people quickly. And you need to be connected to them because they know more than you know. So you have to find them and connect to them.
Well, any last comments you want to make at this particular juncture? I know that we have a whole bunch more we could talk about, but do you want to just say something about the power of storytelling, just to end up our conversation for today?
There's so many ways that stories serve us, but one of the most important that seems obvious to some who participate in storytelling is that storytelling connects us. You can't listen to a story without trying to make meaning, and without looking for yourself in the story. Who are you? Who would you feel like? Who do you agree with? Who are you like in that story? That's what we all do. We're looking for ourselves. That's how we relate to things. The story is the mirror. So that's why it's good to hear other people's stories, and it'll let you know how your beliefs, ideas, feelings, or emotions are mirrored by other people. And once we know that people can be a mirror, then we feel connected to them. We see ourselves in them.
That is amazing. I can't wait till our next conversation.